Welcome to Photography After Hours. Should you second shoot? Welcome back. Big cheers out there, guys and ladies.
Cheers.
So I'd like to introduce our moderation crew out here. We have Scott, Sprague, Susie, and my name is Nick. We're here from After Hours, and we are sponsored for this episode by PAC. So a little bit about PAC. It's a Photographers Adventure Club. We do workshops, seminars, all kinds of education. We do these after-hour shows right now, and then we do photo walks. So check us out on the web, photoadvclub.com. So we're going to start off, should you second shoot? We're going to start off with our resident wedding photographer, Scott Alak here, who's going to give us a little bit of insight of, is this right for you and where you should go with it? So give us your viewpoint on everything.
Yes, I think if you're getting into any type of event photography whatsoever, I think that second shooting is a very good idea. It's definitely, it's kind of, you can look at second shooting in two ways. It can either be of a mentorship, where you're learning the ropes of the business, or if you're a more established photographer, it could be a means of, networking with other photographers, or even just being able to use your skills to add value and benefit to the job. Because the second shooter part doesn't necessarily need to be viewed as a less important role. It's just as important as the primary photographer, the lead photographer, because you would get different angles, different views, different perspectives.
Explain really quick, just for people that might not be familiar, what a second shooter does.
Well, a second shooter follows the lead of, usually would follow the lead of the lead photographer. However, it's a second vantage point on a lot of events. The reason why you would have a second shooter is because, well, you can't be in two places at the same time. You physically can't. And when things are happening in a linear fashion, you can't stop it. You have no control over it. You need to have different perspectives and different vantage points. And you need to be literally in two places at the same place. So that's why you would have
more coverage.
You get more coverage. So not only would you have a second photographer, but I've even been on jobs where you have a third and fourth photographer.
Sure.
So, there's two ways of looking at it. There's one of looking at it as I said before, as a mentorship, someone who's learning the ropes, who wants to get in the business, because, a lot of these events, there's really not a school for this. There's no education for this. You don't go to college for it. You learn on the job. And that's what, one role of second shooting is you get that on the job training. But if you're an established photographer, you can also get, that extra perspective. So yes, definitely.
Well, what do you think of even second shooting for backup and stuff? Do you figure that's value for the first photographer to be able to kind of have that as a backup? And if the second photographer totally fails, it doesn't make a difference because you still have your initial shot. So you can learn under someone very experienced and really kind of see if this is right for you. You may try to do it and say, photography is not for me. I don't want to be an event photographer. So Sprague, what do you feel about that?
Well, and it's also a transferable skill because you're taking pictures of people. I do mostly travel photography and street photography, but basically wedding photography is the same thing with better lighting. So I think in that respect, you're still, getting kind of the same type of experience, and, anything that can, add to your bag of tools to do your job better is always valuable. And so I'd very much like to second shoot a wedding, even though I don't shoot events all that often.
Sure.
Yeah. I learned live event photography differently just from getting out there and finding, what shots were working and weren't in a concert environment, in a nightclub environment, that kind of thing, shooting performance acts. And there would have been a lot of benefit if there had been an opportunity for me to be a second shooter in that kind of situation and learn from somebody. And then conversely, it could be helpful in some cases to have someone helping me, and getting shots from the opposite side of the stage, that kind of stuff.
It's terribly
like Scott
challenging
mentioned.
lighting. I've tried to do that with you, and it's, it's not cut and dry. Just go up and shoot it. It's like,
Right.
why does yours look awesome and mine sucks? So to just bounce that off and sit with you and shoot that stuff really, you kind of get a different perspective of like, okay, mine looks nothing like yours, and kind of walk through it with someone.
Yeah, and I like the points that were brought up about there can be a couple of different objectives in being a second shooter, in that you may want to learn from the person you're mentoring from or with. You want to learn, maybe even for wedding photography, I would consider going and being a second shooter, because I've found myself shooting friends' weddings just because I happen to be there with my camera, and so I have helped out and gotten some extra shots for them. But I'm not a wedding photographer, and I don't do weddings. So, but I think there's an enormous amount of benefit that I could get from that type of experience, and the only way I'd even consider it is being a second shooter or even a third or fourth shooter, somebody who's non-critical, and then I can have a little bit of exposure to some of the other parts of the process that go into setting up and the planning and the forethought and all of those things that just seem to happen or just effortless in great wedding photography.
There's a lot that goes into
more than
event
meets
photography.
the eye. Yeah.
What about the stress level? Like, so as a second shooter, you don't have to be as stressed as if you were going out to do your first event or wedding or whatever, because now you're depending on all your skills and what happens if something doesn't work. So tell me a little bit about that. As a second shooter, you kind of walk in and...
Well, yes and no. I mean, it depends on your role, like I said, because if you are taking that position where you are the second vantage point, or you're the other person in the other location, there's often times where I will go onto an event, if it is a wedding, and I will cover the bride while my second shooter covers the groom. Gotcha. And so my second shooter is on his own. He's doing his thing, or she's doing her thing by herself, and I'm relying on her to get those shots that I would be getting.
But you wouldn't be hiring a newbie for that. You'd be hiring someone that you...
I usually work with people that I've worked with before. Gotcha. I do have a network, pretty large network of photographers that I work with. But, I have had other photographers that are like, hey, I'm interested in just kind of, learning, and I want, can I just hang,
get your feet wet,
get my feet wet and hang out with you, and can I just see how you shoot a wedding? And so for that point, I'm just like, hey, I've got this pretty much covered, and whatever you get that's extra is a benefit,
it's a bonus.
And if you don't get the shot, don't worry about it. I've got it covered for the most part, but feel free to experiment, take different angles, take different shots, sure. And play with it. So yes and no.
Sure.
It depends on your
get
role.
more of the families and the candids and the less critical shots, and then as their experience builds with additional second shooter opportunities, then probably their confidence comes up, and they have a better understanding of what shots to definitely get, right? Like you have a list of 200 shots that you always get, things like that, right? And I think experience is the only thing that really helps you understand, or helps you get a good idea of what are those shots that make that list.
Right. Yeah, you have your safe shots, the must-haves. Out of every event, you always have those must-have shots. I've got to get these shots. But then once you get those shots, then it's like playtime. It's experiment. It's I get to fool around. I get to do things I may not have done before, try new things, and that's also the benefit of being a second shooter. Is that when you are with another photographer, a lot of times that lead photographer, he may say, you know what, I'm going to get that safe shot, and I want you to get that creative shot. And so, or vice versa, you get the safe shot and I'll get the creative, whichever it is. But what you add to the event, or what you add to the whole project in general, is that you're trying to add diversity to the whole collection that you're shooting. So second shooting is actually a very important role. It shouldn't be diminished by any point. I mean, I hear a lot of people who are like, well, I'm just backup. Well, not always. You know, sometimes you might be backup, but
So for someone like Sprague that wants to get into second shooting and be a little bit more involved, what do you feel that should be his first steps? Where can he go, or how can he get in contact with someone like you to try it out and see if event photography is a path that he wants to maybe migrate towards?
right. Well, for each type of event there are forums for that. There's Facebook is a really good forum for it. They
Our
have all
group's
different.
very active, in
Yeah, they
social
have
media
groups
too,
for
so
it.
you can just
Depending on your area, I know here in Arizona, there's several different groups that you can.
Yeah, Melissa
join.
Jill has a group that's related to that. That's the Pug group, and
Right.
they're very geared towards portraits and wedding
Right.
photography.
There's shoot and share groups. There's
I think that
second
once
shooter.
you get in, when everybody's had the experience, when you get an SLR, friends will typically come to you and ask if you'll shoot a wedding for them, and so usually I think, as we were discussing,
Should
earlier,
you do that though?
Well, yeah, but they usually tend to give you plenty of notice, usually at least 24 to 48 hours, so you have plenty of time to plan for something that you have absolutely no idea how to do, which is great fun, and
it's completely
True.
complete
Well,
sarcasm.
and-
For anybody
and-
who missed that.
the first wedding I shot was exactly like that, and I just said, "Bring your camera, you're shooting our wedding." Okay, great, but
I expect a check at the end.
but they had also hired a group of photographers. There were 3 or 4 of them, and they all had SLRs, and they just walked around and they were shooting pictures and gave them the disc, and I think they charged them the outrageous fee of about $400 to do the whole thing. So
Interesting.
it was a classy operation, and the results were predictably bad. But I think that the problem is that there's a certain way of lighting a wedding that's going to give it that same, sort of the ambiance that you want. And when you're coming at that cold, you don't know how to do that.
Sure.
And that's why when you come at it with a professional photographer like yourself, that's very important for somebody who doesn't know how to do this. Because I shoot street photography and travel photography, and you don't have time to set up lights and things for something that's coming like this, and then boom, there's a shot, and there it goes. And so you have to be very good with ambient light and take what you get and do a lot in post-processing. But with weddings, you do have the luxury of presetting the lights and getting everything staged, so it, like you said, you have certain canned shots, and it's the shot that you want.
Well, it's not just that, and it's not just in weddings in general. I mean, it's really any event. I mean, we shoot corporate events too. I mean, how many giant corporate
PayPal,
parties have we
all
gone
of the-
to that have like literally over 2,000 people at this party, and you've got to cover the whole event. And the thing is that you have to understand the event that you're photographing in order to be able to anticipate what's going to happen next.
Yeah, I need to know.
And it
the
takes a
progression.
tremendous amount of planning in order to set up for those, because usually these events, they move in a very linear fashion, and it's one thing after another, after another, after another, and you have to understand that in order to be ready for that next thing that's coming. So
And you have to know, you have to know what's going on. And it's very true. We have about a minute left here. So in summarization, we'll start over here. Do you think someone should start out second shooting, or should they just go out and do their first wedding or event on their own?
I think they should do it on their own, because there's nothing more invigorating than the panic and the horror and the terror of being totally responsible for a life event that happens hopefully
One
only maybe 3 or 4 times
or
in
4
somebody's
times.
lifetime. This might be their second or third shot at it, and they
Right,
want
and they don't want those friends anymore anyway.
No,
right?
you really
Yeah.
don't. So yeah, I would absolutely second shoot with somebody.
So Susie?
Yeah, it's something I've always kind of had on my list of things to do.
Okay.
And haven't really had the benefit to be a second shooter, formal situation. But I think that just based on experience, us shooting different events, corporate events and things like that, there's a lot more value in just being there than you can ever get out of a book or online and things like that. You're just learning so many things and getting so much more insight than you probably even realize.
All right, and we know where Scott stands on it, and you know where I stand on it. So go out and see if second shooting is for you. Leave some comments in the box below. And this was Photography After Hours. We'll see you the next time around.
Cheers.
All right.